Well, hello everybody. This is Ben Wood coming to you talking to you about CSS Multiple Backgrounds. This is my very first YouTube posting ever, so I'm pretty excited about it. Hopefully it goes well. So let's go ahead and talk about CSS Multiple Backgrounds. First of all, we're going to talk about what are CSS Multiple Backgrounds. We'll discuss how they work and some of the properties and how we specify them, and then we'll review some key points, and that's pretty much going to be our slide or our show today. So alright, well, let's get right into it. So what are CSS multiple backgrounds? Well, this allows the developer, it's a feature of CSS3, but allows the developer to overlap or stack multiple backgrounds like images or just colors, and allows them to change those images or the different properties for those multiple backgrounds. And this makes it really slick, this new feature. It's something that as I've read and studied, that a lot of developers really wish they had just started out with this option, because prior to this, to overlay or stack images, you'd have to nest an image within its own element, and every image had to have its own element, and then you would nest one within the next and tweak and adjust it and make it work, and a lot of coding, a lot of extra coding. And this multiple background feature just makes it so slick and easy. So as far as support, Firefox is 3.6 and above, Safari and Chrome 1.0 and 1.3 plus, Opera 10.5 plus, Internet Explorer 9.0 plus. And then there's lots of other type of browsers out there. You got Edge and whatnot. So make sure as you're programming that using multiple backgrounds that it's applying to the browser, generic browsers that everybody uses. If not, you'll want to create a different option or an alternate option to allow for those older browsers. So you have to look into that and take care of that. But so let's get into how it works. So the first thing about CSS multiple backgrounds are all the background properties that you can set. And so you have one that's just background, and we'll talk about how we use background and how it sets all the background properties in one declaration. We'll get to that in a minute. The next property is background attachment, and this one's pretty cool. I like going to sites where I'm scrolling through the site, but the scenic image in the background is just staying right there, and all the text is just scrolling on top of it. I like to use that. So this one allows it to be attached, fixed, or scrolls with the rest of the page, so you can play with that. And then you've got your background color of the different colors within the element, background images, and what I found is that most multiple backgrounds are being used with the multiple images, and stacking those multiple images and changing the properties within them, and you'll see that in a second as well. And then you've got the positioning, starting point, and this is really like your X, Y, and Z, or X and Y on the page. So top left, bottom right, center, or top left, and then down 20 pixels. So this is your position of your background, because it doesn't have to be for the whole page. It can be for an element within the page, that background for that element, and you can set multiple backgrounds for that one element within the body. So. And then you've got the background that repeats, and the most common repeat that I found was basically like a checkerboard. You make it repeat, and it looks just like a checkerboard or a plaid of your images across the screen. So, all right, and then how to specify the background properties. And so there's two different ways to specify them. The one that we'll probably be most familiar with is the individual way, and then there's the shorthand. And what I found is that shorthand, through the comments, shorthand is what everybody wants to use, because it keeps it all in one bracket in the CSS. It keeps it on one line. It's easy to flow and tell which, how you're changing one image with like repeat or positioning opposed to another image within that same shorthand line. So we'll go ahead and I'll show you an example here in a second. Let's talk about the individual properties. So first you're going to declare the element. It'll be the, like the body or the main or whatever element it is, or class or ID that you want to go ahead and make this work in. But you set each desired background property of the element, each property having its own line with a closing semicolon. So this is what we're already used to doing right now, how we're coding our CSS is every property within that element is going to have a closing semicolon. So you do this last list here, you do your background attachment, closing semicolon, and then background color, closing semicolon, image, closing semicolon. Okay, and then, but as you do the multiple images or multiple backgrounds, those multiple images or backgrounds have to be separated by a comma within that list. If it's not separated with that comma, it will not work. And then the next thing is that the first image, this is important, the first image in that list is going to be the image that is closest to the user. So you'll see that here in my example a little bit later, but those are very, very two important things. The closing semicolon is something that we're just used to doing, but you got to make sure you have that separating comma, and that you you understand that the image first in the list is the one that is closest to the user. So here's my example here below. You've got the body, you've got a body image. Here's one URL for an image, another URL for an image, and that sets an image as the images as the background. So the first one's going to be closest to the user. It might be the smaller one positioned somewhere, and then the next one's going to be behind it a little bit bigger. And then you can see that it's got its own line, the background positioning, left top. That has its own line, and then no repeat. I put that in there as well. That has its own line with a closing semicolon. So that is the individual specification of the property. Then we have the shorthand specification of the property, and like I said earlier, this is what most developers are choosing to use because it's just a lot more slick. So you declare your element as normal. You set the background property in a single line instead of multiple lines, and then you add all the background properties desired within one line, again separating each with a comma, and then closing it with your closing semicolon, of course. And then again, the first image or first background in that list is going to be the one closest to the user. So here I have in one line what I just did on the last page. You've got the background, you've got the URL image, it's in the left top, no repeat, and then the next image would be in the left top, no repeat. More than likely that second image is going to be a little bit bigger so that it isn't covered by the first image or the image that's closest to the user. But this is what you would want to use if you're using shorthand specification for this multiple background properties. And here's an example. So I have 3 different images here in this list. On the left hand side you can see I have they're the same backgrounds, but on the left hand side is the individual, and I've declared it down here. You can see I've got the images, and there's their list of images, and then I have no repeat, but then I've got them starting in the right bottom corner, width 50%. That was for the body, not for this background, but for the container that their background's in. So anyway, but you can see how the shorthand compares to the individual. It's the exact same coding as far as properties and of the different images, and it looks exactly the same, and it's all in one line. I've got everything separated by commas, ending with a semicolon, and it makes it a bit available. If I wanted to repeat one of those images, I could repeat that image all by itself within that list, or start it in a different position. I think this makes it a little bit easier to control those images on the page. Alright, so then just to review our key points to CSS multiple backgrounds. Multiple backgrounds within the background list must be separated with a comma. Shorthand provides an advantage because you get to manipulate each background image separately within the same line, and so it's nice and clean within that same list, each having to be separated by a comma. And again, this is a new feature. It's and then double check your browsers and figure in alternate options for older browsers if needed. So but that is my presentation. Here's my cited works. These are the 5 different places that I did my research to find out a lot more about multiple backgrounds. So, well, hey, thanks. I hope you've enjoyed my presentation, and good luck to everybody.